Truck and tractor pulling, also known as power pulling, is a motorsport competition, popular in United States, Europe, Australia and Brazil, and New Zealand, which requires modified tractors to pull a heavy sled along a 35-foot wide, 330-foot long track, with the winner being the tractor that pulls the sled the farthest. The sport is known as the world's most powerful motorsport, due to the multi-engined modified tractor pullers. All tractors in their respective classes pull a set weight in the sled. When a tractor gets to the end of the 100-meter track, this is known as a full pull. When more than one tractor completes the course, more weight is added to the sled, and those competitors that moved past 300 feet will compete in a pull-off. The winner is the one who can pull the sled the furthest. The sled is known as a weight transfer sled. This means that as it is pulled down the track, the weight is transferred from over the rear axles and towards the front of the sled. In front of the rear wheels, there is a pan. This is essentially a metal plate, and as the weight moves over this, the resistance builds. The further the tractor pulls the sled, the more difficult it gets. The most powerful tractors, such as those in the 4.5 modified class in Europe, can produce over 10,000 horsepower. History in the U.S. Prior to the invention of the tractor, when farm implements were pulled by horses, farmers would boast about the strength of their teams and seek to compare and contest against one another to see who had the most powerful animals. In some cases they compared horse teams pulling large loads over distance, such as a fully loaded hay cart or wagon. In other situations, a flatboard or skid would have a horse or team of horses then hitched to it. Weight would be added, usually in the form of rocks, and the driver would ask the horses to pull the load, with more weight added, and competitors were eliminated. The animals pulling the most weight or for the greatest distance were judged the strongest. These events became the formalized sport of horse pulling, which is still carried out today with specially bred draft horses bred to have high strength for pulling heavy loads. Today, fixed weights on sleds are dragged for a set distance and additional weight is added in successive rounds. While it is said that the term horsepower is derived from this event, the concept was developed earlier, in experiments and measurements performed by James Watt. It wasn't until 1929 that motorized vehicles were put to use in the first events at Vargansville, Missouri, and Bowling Green, Ohio, the latter being where the current national championships are held. Although the sport was recognized then, it did not really become popular until the 50s and 60s. It was also realized, at that time, there were no uniform set of rules. The rules varied from state to state, county to county, and competitors never knew what standards to follow. This made the sport difficult for new entrants. In 1969, representatives from 8 states congregated to create a uniform book of rules to give the sport the much-needed structure, and created the National Tractor Pullers Association. The NTPA's early years were events that used standard farm vehicles, with the motto "Pull on Sunday, Plow on Monday." Pulling remained basically the same through the 70s, with only stock and modified tractors. Stock tractors were commercially available tractors produced by manufacturers, and modified tractors were the basic tractor chassis with another non-tractor engine mounted on it. Tractors remained single-engine until 2 Ohio brothers, Carl and Paul Boss, introduced the crossbox, which could allow multiple engines to be attached to a single driveshaft. Other innovators during this period included Bruce Hutchison, with his triple Rodeck engine-powered Marquine-Bacon Special, Dave and Ralph Banter and their Chevrolet-powered tractors, and the Mission Impossible tractors of Tim Engler, which at one point had up to 7 blown alcohol engines on board. Subsequently, modified tractors with 4 engines were common, while stock tractors tried to catch up by adding multiple large turbochargers, along with intercoolers, but both retained the appearance of a tractor. Soon tractors became single-use machines that were not used on the farm, making the "Pull on Sunday, Plow on Monday" motto obsolete. Throughout the 70s and 80s the modified division continued to thrill crowds by adding more engines, and soon the tractors lost their tractor appearance and turned into high-spec dragsters. The limit was reached in 1988 when a tractor with 7 engines was built. As well as piston engines, jet engines appeared in 1974, with Gardner Stone's General Tractor a 4-jet engined unit hitting the hook in 1989. The growing popularity of the sport caused the creation of a new four-wheel drive division in 1976, which captured a large fan base. The engine sizes in these vehicles continued to increase, from 450 cubic inches per 7.3 liters up to 700/11.5 and probably would have continued, but the NTPA limited it to 650/10.6 naturally aspirated and no-blown engine in 1989. Today the four-wheel drive division is one of the most popular with the success of trucks like the Holman Brothers 4-play Chevy and Bob Bodden Studley Studebaker. Two-wheel drive truck class equals. The two-wheel drive division was introduced in 1983. The division imposes a weight limit of 6,200 pounds on each competing truck, a maximum width of 8 feet, and a maximum distance of 15 feet from the center line of the rear axle to the front of the vehicle. Gasoline engines with up to 8 cylinders are permitted, but diesel engines are not. Any wheelbase is permitted. The National Tractor Pullers Association restricts engines to 575 in 3 and 2 valves per cylinder. They permit tubular steel frames. The maximum tire size for the 2WD class is 18.4 x 16.1, with a maximum circumference of 143 inches when mounted on an 18-inch wide rim and inflated to 28 psi. The ground patch is not to exceed 19 inches on original tread. Super Stock, Pro Stock, and Mini Modified Super Stock Open class uses primarily methanol fuel. The Super Stock Open machines can generate over 5,000 horsepower, based upon the single original stock tractor block. Super Stock Open and Super Stock Diesel tractors may use up to 4 turbochargers in 3 stages. The diesels are allowed to compete in the open class, which very rarely occurs anymore. However, a true open tractor is not allowed to compete in the diesel class. There is light Super Stock class which is 6,200 and the heavy Super Stock classes that are 8,000-8,250. Diesel Pro Stock tractors are limited to 1 turbocharger and diesel fuel is the only allowable source for power, in keeping with the spirit of the original tractors. Their engines which max size is 680 cubic inch can reach the 3,250 plus horsepower region. In recent years, new classes have been created to appeal to different groups of pullers. There is now a class called Limited Pro Stock that is limited to 640 cubic inch engine and 4.1 inches turbocharger. This class typically pulls at 9,300, 9,500 and is slightly restricted versus the regular Pro Stocks that can run up to 680 cubic inch engine and any size turbo along with intercoolers. The latest addition to Pro Stocks is the Light Pro Stock class that typically pulls 8,300-8,600 depending on location. These tractors are limited to 540 cubic inch engines but can run any size turbo. They are not allowed to run inner rulers, however these tractors are making on average 2,500-2,800 horsepower. The lightweight makes this class a driver's class. It takes skill to drive that much horsepower down the track. The Mini Modified class is a highly specialized and custom-built tractor to be fitted with a naturally aspirated engine, at minimum. NTPA Minis are limited to 575 cubic inches and uses up to a 14-71 high helix supercharger. With the driver, they weigh only 2,050 pounds. Today's engine is capable of a minimum of 2,500 horsepower on methanol or ethanol. Their reputation is known as the wildest ride in pulling, as naturally it is a very high horsepower to weight ratio. Whereas, their larger counterparts, the modifieds, will weigh 6,000 pounds, 7,500 pounds and 8,000 pounds, utilizing the same engine that a Mini has, but, with multiple power plants per custom-built tractor chassis. Usually, a maximum of 5 engines is all that will make the 8,000-pound weight limit. Nitromethane and oxidizers were outlawed in 1976. Grassroots pulling. History in Australia. The first Australian tractor pull was held at the Elmore Field Days in 1976. The following year saw tractor pulling begin in the Victorian rural town of Quambatook. It has developed over the years into a highly competitive and technical sport. where the difference between first and last place may be as small as 1 or 2 meters. Often the top tractors are separated by mere centimeters. The Australian Tractor Pullers Association is a non-profit organisation that governs tractor pulling in Australia. Our events are held in conjunction with a promoter. This is often a local school, sporting, service or community club who use the event as a fundraiser. Tractor pulls are held in locations throughout Australia, predominantly in Victoria, South Australia and New South Wales. In the West, the Western Australian Tractor Pullers Association runs events and is affiliated with the ATPA. The ATPA is focused on actively promoting this spectacular sport and working with communities to not only establish a unique annual event, but more importantly to assist communities financially through the influx of spectators, sponsors and promotion. The tractors are divided into classes and comply with either limited or open rules. The classes are open modified, super modified, limited modified, open mini modified, pro stock and two-wheel drive trucks. The distinction between classes is determined by the overall maximum weight, engine modifications, fuels and physical size. Competition is open to both women and men, the only restriction being that competitors must at least hold a current learner driver Euro 1 registered trademark S permit. It sometimes comes down to members of the same family competing for the trophies. The Junior Modified Pulling Association conducts an introductory class for 8 to 16-year-olds to develop driving, mechanical and competitive skills. The modified mowers pull their own smaller version of the big sled. Sled pulling. In the early days, two main techniques were used. Either a dead weight of fixed mass was dragged, or the step-on method was used, where people stood at fixed positions and stepped aboard as the sled passed. Another rule which has now been dropped was that a speed limit should be observed because of injuries resulting from the increased speed at which they boarded. Today's tractors can achieve theoretical speeds over 125 miles per hour. Today's sleds use a complex system of gears to move weights up to 65,000 pounds/29,000 kilograms. Upon starting, all the weights are over the sled's rear axles, to give an effective weight of the sled plus 0. As the tractor travels the course, the weights are pushed forward of the sled's axles, pushing the front of the sled into the ground, synthetically creating a gain in weight until the tractor is no longer able to overcome the force of friction. Most sleds have grouser bars that act like teeth and dig into the soil to stop the sled. Radio control pulling, radio control truck and tractor pulling has been around since the late 1980s. It was started by a group of people interested in RC pulling, near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, U.S. The main RC pulling group is the NRCTPA. NRCTPA also has many, smaller, affiliated clubs, such as County Line RC Pullers Club, Club No. 1 and the NRCTPA. Engines. Apart from modified standard diesel tractors, a variety of high-power engines are used in tractor pulling, which started in the late 1970s. In the early years, mainly single, double or multiple US-made big block dragster engines were used, but nowadays, a lot of parts from discarded military machinery are in use, like Klimov TV3-117 turbo shafts from Russian helicopters, Soviet Zvezda M503 torpedo boat engines, Continental Avenue 1790 tank engines, or World War II-era aircraft piston engines in V12 shape or as radial engines. Due to the limited number of vintage Warbird engines remaining, some organizations that own them, such as the Fantasy of Flight Museum in Florida, refuse to sell engines from their collection to customers that wish to use them for tractor pulling. In recent years, a number of agricultural engines have been converted to run on methanol with multi-stage turbocharging. Organizations. There are many different organizations with different rules in tractor pulling. Some include U.S. NTPA, a Euro National Tractor Pullers Association, PPL, a Euro Lucas Oil Pro Pulling League, ITPA, a Euro Illinois Tractor Pulling Association, MSPA, a Euro Mid-South Pullers Association, MATPA, Missouri-Arkansas Truck Pulling Association, ESP, a Euro Empire State Pullers, WNYPFP, a Euro Western New York Pro Farm Pullers, NBPA Euro Nebraska Bush Pullers, OSTPA Euro Ohio State Tractor Pullers Association, SPA Euro Southern Pullers Association, PAPA, Piedmont Antique Power Association, PTMTP, Pine Tree Mini Tractor Pullers Association, UTTPI, United Truck and Tractor Pullers, ATPA, Adirondack Tractor Pullers Association, NSPA, National Sled Pullers Association. Europe, DTP Euro Danish Tractor Pulling, ETPC Euro European Tractor Pulling Committee, NTTO Euro Netherlands Truck and Tractor Pulling Organization, DTTO Euro German Tractor Pulling Organization, FITP Euro Federazione Italiana Tractor Pulling, FTPA Euro Finnish Tractor Pulling Association, BKTV Euro Belgian Power Tractor Organization, FTPF Euro Far Copyright DAO Copyright Rechten von der Sectioners de Tractor Pulling, RTPA Euro Tractor Pulling Russia, STPK Euro Swedish Tractor Pulling Association. UK, BTPA Euro British Tractor Pullers Association, MTPC Euro Midland Tractor Pullers Club, NWTPA Euro Northwest Tractor Pullers Association, STPC Euro Scottish Tractor Pullers Club. Australia, ATPA Euro Australian Tractor Pullers Association Incorporated. MTPA Euro Mini Tractor Pullers Association Incorporated. QTPA Euro Quambatuk Tractor Pullers Association Incorporated. WATPA Euro West Australian Tractor Pull Association, JMPA Euro Junior Modified Pulling Association, Other, NRCTPA Euro National Radio Control Truck Pulling Association, ABTT Euro Associa Picavolt Pound O Brasileira de Trek Brazilian Tractor Pulling Association, NSPA Euro National Sled Pulling Association, SPA Euro Southern Pullers Association, BTPA Euro Badger Truck Pullers Association, OTTPA, Ontario Truck and Tractor Pulling Association, SWTPA http, www.swtpa.org.uk/. References, 2010 Pulling Rules, National Tractor Pullers Association, a division of World Pulling International, Incorporated, http, www.ntppull.com st. %20 Hyacinth %200 2006 HTM, AB Pulling 101, NTPA Pull www.ntppull.com. Retrieved September 7, 2015. The Sled. Lake Country Antique Tractor Association. Retrieved July 27, 2011. 4 different tractors of a German team, http, www.isotivdesteckbriefiso2htm, http, www.kaipenkel-team.com/ dragon_fire.htm, kaipenkel 2, http, www.greenspirit.info/ tractron.php, http, www.rudelyluhtml specs php, Warbirds and Air Shows, Fantasy of Flight, website retrieved August 20, 2013. External links, Tractor and Truck Pulling at DMOZ. Sources, possible sources of verification. Origins of horse pulling, history of tractor power pulling and sled technology, the rules of tractor power pulling, United Pullers of the Carolinas.